Welcome to Write Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 200. Woohoo! Building a Career, an interview with Joanna Penn, coming to you on Thursday, June 4th, 2020. I'm so excited! 200 episodes! Yay! If you're watching on YouTube, yes, I have my party hat on. If I had some of those streamers and the things that you blow into at kids' birthday parties, not the kazoos, but the ones that anyway, I would have lots of more party stuff if I could, but I figured the hat was definitely a 200 episode kind of hat. So yay, happy birthday to us. We've been together 2.5 years, 200 episodes together. I'm very, very excited. I hope that you have been enjoying it. If you're finding this episode for the first time, there's 199 other episodes that you can catch up on. I'm very, very glad you're here. I'm having such a great time with you. I'm not sure if I'm willing to do what Joanna does, and sometimes she'll say, okay, I've made it to 400. I promise to go to at least 500, because I'm like, wow, that's almost a 2-year promise. But I'm definitely going to keep on going. There's no reason to stop yet, right? More and more of you are finding the show and enjoying it, and hopefully you're getting lots of good tips and helps and encouragement out of it, and that is why I'm doing it. So, a couple of quick reminders. Remember, we are not doing the first annual Write Now Workshop Writers Conference in 2020. We're going to try it again in 2021. Due to coronavirus and all sorts of things that are going on in the world, it just seemed like maybe we should put off the conference for a little while. But I don't want to put off spending time with you and sharing information that's in my head and other people's heads. So there are still going to be other ways that we can get together. For instance, on Saturday, July 25th, my friend Jennifer Dornbush, who's been on the show, she and I are going to be putting on kind of a mini conference. It'll be a half day. She and I and one more special guest, which I hesitate to announce until it's official, are going to be putting on a mini conference called Writing with Hollywood in Mind. So I'll be talking about how to use script writing techniques to make your novel more visually and action-packed, kind of exciting. And Jennifer will be talking about how to know whether or not your book idea is something that Hollywood might want to adapt, or if the idea that you have for a screenplay is a big enough kind of idea for the screen. And again, we have a special guest in mind who will also be adding to that theme, and we'll just have to wait to announce her later. So that will be Saturday, July 25th. Jennifer and I are going to put on a couple of free webinars before then. So I think July 1st and July 18th, we'll be putting on some free webinars, teaching you a little bit about what we'll be talking about at our mini conference. So I will give you more information and a place where you can sign up for those very soon. Also, because I love to teach, instead of doing the conference this year, I'm going to do a little bit more on the teaching side. But again, it'll be not together physically, but together through Zoom. So I'm going to start doing officially, I've been doing it on and off for the last, 15 or more years, but I'm going to officially start doing some book coaching. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about a new class that I'm putting together that'll probably only have about 5 or 6 students in it, but we will be 100% totally focusing on each individual student, coaching them through their project. This class is going to be specifically oriented towards people who have been wanting to start and just 100,000 things keep you from starting, or you've started a whole bunch of times and never finished, or you've been working on the same project for 2 or 3 or 10 years and you just haven't finished. So I want to help you to get started or get finished, or both. That would be great. It'll be a 2-month program. It'll be a lot of personal one-on-one calls as well as group calls, and I think it's probably going to start about the end of June. I think June 29th, if all goes well. If you're interested, get a hold of me and we'll get on a Zoom call and see whether or not this is a program that would be good for you. I would love to help you start and finish your project this year. Make 2020 the big year. Woo! Then we'll wear the party hat again. Yay! So get a hold of me at either kitty@kittybucholtz.com or send me a message on Facebook Messenger, which is just Kitty Bucholtz, or send me a message on Twitter, which again is Kitty Bucholtz. If you're just listening and you're like, I never did know how to spell your name, Kitty, you can probably find my name in your podcast app that you're listening to or on the YouTube channel that you're watching, but it is KITTYBUCHOLTZ. So reach out to me. Let's get a Zoom call. We'll find out whether or not this is a program that could help you. I would love to help you. And in other news, summer schedule. That's right. This is the first episode of June. So we will be on summer schedule for June, July, and August. That means that I will be going every other week with an interview or other teaching related topic, but I have a ton of interviews planned out. So we have so many great guests coming up. I'm just so excited. There's so much to tell you and so much to share with you. So starting today, June 4th, it'll be every 2 weeks. So the next episode would be June 18th, except for, nope, the first Sunday of June hasn't happened yet. So in just a couple of days, it'll be the first Sunday of the month, in which case the Encouraging Words episode will come out. So that will be in a few days, but otherwise it'll be 2 weeks until we have another episode. We'll do that for June, July, and August. So a little bit of summer vacation time for me and for you. Hopefully you will do what I'm going to be doing, which is more writing. So if you are in the middle of a project, keep going. You've got it. It's going to be awesome. And if you're struggling, well, reach out to me because maybe I'll have some tips for you. Maybe this class that I'm doing is the right thing for you. I want to see you succeed. I want to see both of us succeed. And sometimes that means taking a little bit of break in the summer from our usual activities and focusing a little bit more on writing. So give that a try. See if it works for you. I know that we're all struggling with rearranged schedules and then try to rearrange them again. And now some people are going back to work and we're rearranging them again. So if there's anything that I can do to help, please do let me know. In the meantime, I cannot tell you how excited I was when I reached out to Joanna Penn to be my special guest on my 200th episode. She was my first choice and she said yes, and I was very, very excited. I probably cannot tell you guys often enough, if you're not listening to the Creative Penn podcast as well, and if you're not listening to Self-Publishing Formula podcast with Mark Dawson and James Blatch, those are two more that you are going to get so much information out of. There's a lot of great ones out there. Those two are my favorites. So hopefully I will encourage you to at least give them a try. But Joanna has been podcasting for 10 years, and she has met so many people who have given her and all of her audience so much incredible advice, and I'm one of those people. I would not have as many books out as I do, and I would not be podcasting, and I would not be doing a lot of things if it weren't for all the guests that I've heard on the Creative Penn podcast. So I hope that you are as excited as I am to listen to Joanna and to call her wisdom and make it a part of your own writing life and writing career. This is the year. This is the year. Whatever it is that you've been thinking, this is my new goal for this year for writing, let's make it happen. Together we can do it. I have so many great ideas that I want to share with you guys, and I cannot overestimate sprinting enough. We'll talk about that more again later. So with all of my excitement in my party hat, let me just let you be introduced to Joanna Penn. Today's guest is Joanna Penn. Joanna is an award-nominated New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of thrillers under the name J.F. Penn. She also writes nonfiction for authors under her full name. She's a podcaster and an award-winning creative entrepreneur. Her site, thecreativepenn.com, has been voted in the top 100 sites for writers by Writer's Digest. Welcome, Joanna.
Thanks for having me on the show, Kitty.
I'm so glad to have you here. I have to tell you, my very first thought when I thought to myself, 200 episodes, man, I got to have somebody that I just love, somebody amazing. Who could it be? And then the first person I asked said yes.
Or at least I was the first person, or you would have had loads of people. There are very few shows that make it to 200, so congratulations.
Oh, well, thanks for that. I have to say there are so many shows out that I never really think about where they're at as far as in episodes or number of years or whatever. So Joanna Penn told me congratulations. So this is not an elephant in the room anymore. We have now looked the elephant in the eye, and the elephant is, I'm such a fangirl.
Wait, you're calling me an elephant now, Kitty?
No. Though after 2.5 months of cooking and baking constantly, I feel like an elephant in the room.
Yeah, lockdown lard is what we've been calling it in our house.
Oh, that's hysterical. I've been telling people the next pandemic will be the obesity pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, sorry, back where you were.
Yeah, back to I'm such a fangirl. So I have been following you, listening to you, reading your blog posts. Like, I can't even think. But when I went back and looked at your bio again, I was like, wait a minute. No, I think I'm one of your fans from like near the beginning, because I was like, well, I lived in Australia when you started your podcast, which means I definitely had a smartphone to listen to podcasts on. So yeah, that's exciting.
That's very cool. I mean, I started the podcast 2009, but I didn't really know what I was doing for a couple of years because that was quite early on.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more of a clear path these days as to what things are. But I'm really glad I've continued, and I'd encourage people, like, whatever we're going to talk about lots of things. But the fact is, I've been doing all of this for over a decade, and if you persist for this long, then something good is going to happen eventually. So yeah, persistence is probably the key to podcasting, to being an author, to making money, the whole thing.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's a thing in creativity in general, perhaps, because I was in a screenwriting program in LA, and a couple of different people who were, big enough names that, like, their shows and stuff, were saying that you pretty much just have to think of it as a game of musical chairs. You just need to be the last person standing. Somebody's going to lose their seat, and it might not be you. It might be open for you.
Absolutely. And keep being in the place where the moving is going. And I think a lot of people jump out of things too soon, and then they're not there when there's a chair available. So yeah, I think definitely persistence. And that's why, about the 200 episodes you're on, I'm coming up to 500 episodes, which, I mean, there are probably, I don't even know, not many, very few podcasters going after that long. And also it is about business model. So either, you can do 200 episodes and enjoy it, which clearly you do, because you can't do it for that long without enjoying it. But you also have to start thinking about, how does it pay? How does it, because it takes time, it takes energy. And I think the same with writing. I saw a statistic the other day, most published authors only have 3 books.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And that's unusual in the independent community. I think indie authors, we do a lot more books, but I think that's because a lot of authors don't see the success that they had in their heads. And usually that success is win a prize, earn a lot of money. I don't think being famous is often there, but yeah, I think the long-term game is really important. And I think about that all the time. If I'm going to be like Stephen King in my 60s or whatever, then I just need to keep going and doing what I do for 20 odd years.
Yeah And that's not that much longer.
Exactly. I've got a lot of time to practice.
Yeah. And the thing that's great, and I think that it's important to keep in mind, in our industry, and in fact in a lot of other arts industries, it's not like in the movie and television business where there are actually X number of jobs, and X may grow or contract. But you can't just, unless you're going to go indie, there isn't any place to go if you can't get other people to work with. So not true in our business.
I think that I have written a few screenplays, and what put me off trying to take it any further was, even if you get bought, someone buys your screenplay, the chances are it will never go any further. It will never see the light of day. And that's quite, like, a lot of screenwriters become quite demoralized, I think, around not seeing their work out there. Whereas, and even if someone does make it, it could be years. I think Lee Child says it took 20 years for Jack Reacher to become a movie, and you just can't stake your career on that type of thing happening. So I mean, like most fiction authors, I would love a film, TV deal, whatever, but I'm not going to stake my career on that, in the same way that I'm not going to stake my career on a lightning strike, like becoming the next J.K. Rowling or something like that. I think if you have that attitude of, well, I love writing things, I like creating things in the world, then I'll just carry on, and as long as I can pay my bills, then it's good.
Right. Yeah. Because it is hard to type out of a, cardboard box on the sidewalk.
And I never wanted that. I had a corporate career before this, and I always liked money. I still like money. I like traveling, and, I like having a pension and all that. So I feel like this is a very possible career if you want to make decent money as well. You just have to do it in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue. So we're going to call this episode Building a Career because first of all, 200th episode, it needs like a great theme, but also, also just if anybody is watching on YouTube, looking at the wall behind Joanna, yes, those are indeed only a small portion of all the books that you have out. So let's talk a little bit about, I love hearing, some people like to hear stories about somebody's baby. I don't have babies and I've never really wanted one. Yeah. I like knowing about when did you first decide to write a book and then how did that go? So let's start at the beginning, but just give us the nickel tour so that we can then start talking about what we can offer people listening and how they can be building their career from wherever that they're at right now.
Yeah, so I was IT consultant. I did a software package called SAP, if people don't know that. It's a German software package. And I was implementing accounts payable in corporates around Europe. And then I went to New Zealand, Australia. And so I had this corporate job, very well paid, 6-figure salary, but I got to my sort of early 30s and I was like, this is so pointless and boring and I can pay all my bills, but I'm miserable. And I got to the point of crying at work, and my husband was like, you should do something else with your life, and so at that point I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And this was sort of 2006. Tim Ferriss came out with the 4-Hour Work Week. I started listening to bloggers and I thought, oh, this is great, I can make a living online. I can so I thought I'd become a speaker / blogger and then podcaster, although it wasn't really called that back then. So it was more like an online business with blogging. So I started to go down that route. And as I was doing this work, I was researching how to make a living, how to find what I wanted to do with my life. And I thought, oh, well, I'll write a book. And I wrote, my first book was called Career Change. It was about how to find a life you want to do, a job you want to do. And in writing that book, what was hilarious is I discovered publishing, because I assumed I would just get someone to publish it. And then I started learning about publishing and decided that I could do a better job myself, but then failed miserably, which was hilarious. So I didn't do a better job myself. But what it showed, and this was 2008. This was before before the KDP, before the Kindle took off, in the very early days of ebooks. But then what I did is double down on that. I did more nonfiction. I started speaking, and then I started writing fiction in 2011, left my job in 2011, and 2015 started making 6 figures, and overtook my old income, and my husband left his job. So basically at this point now, as we talk in sort of mid 2020, I'm coming up on 9 years of full-time author entrepreneur, and certainly 5 years of earning more than I did in my day job. So it took a long time, but as you say, I've got sort of 32 books in different genres, but I also have a website, a podcast, I have multiple streams of income, and so all of that has grown over the years.
Yeah. And it's an important thing for people to remember, so my audience has some traditionally published authors, some self-published, and some hybrid. So talking about a little bit to everybody. But I will say, for the people who are traditionally published, I know more and more of you are thinking to yourself, I can write more than 1 book a year. You don't have any place to sell it. So I know that some of you listening actually started becoming a hybrid author simply because you like to write more than what can be published. And there's a lot of people who are, teaching a little bit of something somewhere. You have created all these different, first of all, again, back to Fangirl for a minute. When we were at SVF Live, the last live event I've been to in March in London, I thought arguably your presentation was the best one of the day.
Oh, thank you. Of course it was.
Of course it was. But there are so many things that you share about ways that you can increase your income, but also you have, it would appear, have chosen to do things because you like them, as well as the fact that it's a good business decision. So if somebody's listening, they're like, but I don't really like to teach. That's not what we're advocating, right?
No, I mean, no, I don't really do much teaching at all. I speak a couple of times a year, but I don't make a lot of money speaking. I mainly choose speaking things based on, well, I spoke at SPF Live because of Mark is my friend, and it's my community, but also I'll speak places if I want to go to that place. So I get asked to speak all the time at random places in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, no, not interested. But when I'm like, well, hopefully, fingers crossed, 2021, I'll be speaking at Colorado Springs, and I haven't been there, and everyone says it's lovely, so yeah, of course I'll go there. But so that's one thing. But professional speaking can be good income, but equally it's not for everyone. And then online teaching, so I do have some courses on Teachable, so for example, how to turn what you know into an online course, which I did recently because everyone was asking me the question. So, but those, again, I record them and I put them up for sale, a bit like books. They're up there, you can buy them or not, up to you, and then I don't have to do anything once they're up. I think if you want to teach or consult or coach, that to me is a service business model that I personally don't choose, but a lot of people love that model and love working more with people one-on-one, whereas I choose scalable income models. So I much prefer creating something. Like books are brilliant because you create a book and then you can sell it for the rest of your life and 70 years after you die, and you don't have to, well, unless it's nonfiction and you have to update it, mostly they can stay there and just keep earning money. And also things like podcasting, affiliate income, these are things you create once. So say I do a tutorial on Pro Writing Aid, I create that once and it earns me money every month. Or the podcast, I create it once and someone might discover the podcast today and go and listen to hundreds of backlist episodes. So I haven't had to do any more work for that person to download it. So what I want people listening to think is, you have to choose what makes you happy and what is sustainable. And I'm an introvert, and we were going to do this the other day and I was just too burned out. So I said, sorry, I can't do it. But if you had paid me for consulting, I would have felt like, oh, I can't cancel this because, that was arranged. Or if I was teaching a class live, I couldn't have moved it. Whereas I like a living where I can be more in control and have more freedom. So I think people listening, you just have to decide, yes, what's going to make some money, but also how do you want to live? And I was miserable in that old job. I definitely don't want to be in this job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to be miserable, then definitely have somebody else be in charge of everything.
Exactly. You can earn a lot more money being miserable doing something else.
That's right. Okay, so let's focus just on the writing for a minute. So I have read, I think I've read at least one book from all of your series, including the co-written book that you did. So you have, on the one hand, a niche, but on the other hand, you've been at this long enough where looking back, you probably feel like that maybe was a mistake, this road that I took right here. Or I know that you've changed covers on things. So let's say that we're talking to people, we'll talk to all of you guys all together, but let's say for a minute, we're talking to the people who they're maybe only have one or two books out, or they've got some books written and they're kind of getting ready to go, but they're nervous. There's lots to be nervous about. But what are some of the things that you would say to the newer writer as far as, focus or staying calm or the amount of work?
So what do you think people are nervous about?
I think that sometimes the idea of putting the very first book out there. I remember I published my first book in 2011. When the best that you could get for a how-to guide was a class I found, I think, through RWA, where the directions were do this, and if that doesn't work, do this, and if that doesn't work. So it was all in Word and lots of fun. And I'm sure you probably did something. There's a lot of things about the tech that are going to make things easier for people now. But I think the idea of is the book ready? Has it been edited enough? Am I going to be one of those people who is actually the person who's done it all wrong and I don't know it until people laugh at me? Those sorts of things might be a worry for people.
I think this partly why I wrote my book, The Successful Author Mindset, because I understand fear. For me, it was always fear of judgment. It still is often, what will people think of me? I mean, because I self-published in the very early days, I got, especially when I moved back to the UK, I got a lot of negative reaction. I got a lot of, not so much nastiness, but brush off. And, you know, you must be pathetic kind of thing. And to a point that still is around, but I'm comforted by the bank account.
Yeah, that's right. You can take your literary novel and enjoy it over there.
Enjoy that. I'm gonna go off to this nice Michelin star restaurant this evening. Thank you very much.
Right. Yeah.
But, no, putting that aside, I think all I can say is I don't feel like I've failed at being an author. But every time you look at what you've done last year or the year before, you think, I could do it so much better now. So there's a few things you have to hold in your head as a writer. The first is, this is the very best project. This is the very best I can do right now. And that means, as with your editing, you hire a professional editor. With your cover design, you hire a professional cover designer. With your marketing, you learn, you upskill, you do all of that. So you're trying the best you can, right? And yeah, there's a lot to learn. But equally, until you actually publish one, like I talked to a woman earlier, and she is incredibly successful in so many areas, and yet because she'd never uploaded a book on KDP before, she was, like you say, nervous about it. And I'm like, you've done so many incredible things. Why is this a problem? Just log on to this website, kdp.amazon.com, and just have a look. But there's this fear, as you say, of getting it wrong. All I can say to people is, look, this is going to happen whether you traditionally publish or indie. The best thing, one of the best things about being indie is that you can just upload another book.
Right.
So, if you submit that book to a traditional publisher and you hate the cover they've put on it, tough luck. Or if people find a typo on book one, on page one, then you can't fix it because you don't have control. Whereas if you upload your book on day one as an indie, and look, no one's going to know who you are anyway, so you can keep it really, really quiet.
So true.
And then basically you're like, oh no, what did I do? It's okay, because A, you could just unpublish it, or B, you upload a new cover, you upload a new version of the book, you change the keywords, you learn some new marketing, you do it again. So this is the thing. And so, yes, sorry, you're just going to make mistakes. That's the way. But that doesn't mean you failed. What it means is, oh, I just learned another lesson here. Or, if people are like, oh, I don't want to do Amazon ads or BookBub ads because I'll spend too much money. Yes, you will spend too much money in the first iteration, but then the lesson you learn will mean you can move on. So let's take my first novel, which was originally Pentecost, and I published it under Joanna Penn. And so if you see pictures of it now, it looks nothing like it. It's called Stone of Fire, and it's by J.F. Penn, and it's got a different cover. The book has been re-edited, but it's still the same book on Amazon. It's got, hundreds of reviews and all this. And I still upload new versions of that when I change the back matter. I've changed the keywords. I'm still, like, I was running BookBub ads on that the other day, and that's 9 years old, that book.
Right.
So what you have to think is, the problem with traditional publishing is that they have this obsession with the month of launch, and that has spilled over into how authors feel. But that month of launch is nothing. Like, I don't feel that's important, really. I mean, what's more likely, so I hit the USA Today list 5 years after publication with a box set.
Really?
Yeah, because it's much easier to do a promotional campaign when your book's been out a while than it is to do it in week one, especially if nobody knows who you are. So, and in fact, I've got a push coming up in a couple of weeks' time, beginning of June, for my book Map of Shadows, which I literally haven't done any marketing on until I have all 3 books ready, and then I'm going to market book 1. So circling back to your point, yes, you're going to feel nervous. That never stops. You just have to learn to live with it. Yes, you're going to make mistakes, but that's the only way you learn. I can tell you everything I know, and I do. It's all on my website. Most of it's free. You can download all the stuff, but no one is going to be able to help you give it a go and learn the lessons that you've got to learn, basically.
Yeah. That's definitely the exact same kind of experiences I've had. And the way that I try to look at it is, I'm a storyteller, and it's a much funnier story with a glass of wine 5 years later to look at the very first cover of my very first book. I'm like, I know, this is terrible, wasn't it? It was ridiculous. No wonder I didn't sell any copies. People thought it was a totally different kind of genre.
Exactly. But also what you've got to remember is that traditional publishing does this all the time. They frequently put new covers on books. They frequently change even the title between if the hardback didn't work, they'll change the title and the cover for the paperback. They might try ebook only. They might do some more ads. I mean, Paula Hawkins, The Girl on a Train, that was not her first book. That was her first book as Paula Hawkins, but she had written 4 books previously under another name. So traditional publishing do this all the time. They launch an existing author under a new pen name and try and hit whatever they want to hit next time with the next thing. So that's the other issue, is that you have to try and, we're talking about having a career. So when I put a book out, it's not so much this has to sell X number of copies this month. It's how does this fit into my career as a writer for the rest of my life, and then hopefully after I die as well, there'll be a nice estate for my heirs and successors, whoever they may be. So I think if you have that longer term view, it can really help. But if you're just starting out and you're listening and just starting out, I totally understand. I mean, I still can't look at my 1-star, 2-star reviews. I just can't. It hurt, like physically hurts me. So I don't do that.
Yeah. It's much better on the not just the ego, but just the psyche. I find it difficult to be joyfully creative for a day or two, at least, after I've read something that's
I just don't do that.
Yeah.
I read my 5-star and 4-star to know what people like. The thing is, when you find your voice, in inverted commas, which takes a few books anyway, you come down to what is the DNA of you as a writer, and I don't believe you can change that. You can get better at the craft, but if you want to do this for your career, there are things that just come up over and over again in the writing that you do, and that's you, and that's actually what people like. So I'd rather focus on doubling down on what people like than trying to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that, again, may take you a book or two to realize, unless you're perhaps reading Joanna Penn's Successful Author Mindset.
Still won't help you with writing more books.
Yeah,
might just help you get over the fear along the way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk to the people who are in the middle. You're knee deep. You're still making the amount of money that does not yet allow you to hire any help. So now the more you do, the more you have to do. I totally get you, because I am definitely in that place right now. So what are some of the things that we can share with people from when you were in that place where you had to do everything? Or to some degree, it's probably really similar when you have a full-time job and you're actually still in that place where you're building your career, but you've still got the full-time job. So when you're feeling overwhelmed with the amount of tasks, how do you not necessarily even prioritize? I guess I keep coming back to mindset, which I didn't mean to, but how do you just take a 30,000-foot view again and say, okay, these are the things. I'm going to stop talking and let you answer the question the best you can. Just thinking about people who have, 4 or 5 books out, but it's not enough yet to hire someone, but there's so much work to do. What sorts of advice can we give them?
You said the word prioritize, and that, like, literally that's the only thing you can do. What I would say, if you have 4 or 5 books, or 5 or 6 books, you should know whether or not you want to do this for your full-time job. And so I think your main decision is going to be where you want to get to next. So, and therefore what your goal will be. So when I was in my day job, my goal was always to leave my day job. So I knew I had to make income that replaced what I was earning, and I was the prime wage earner. So I knew how much money I had to make to sustain a lifestyle that I'm accustomed to.
Yeah.
and so that's why I developed multiple streams of income, because books are difficult to make really good money on alone. And that's why most authors full stop make their money in other ways, and the books are just an extra stream. There are very few authors in the world who only make money from book sales for the long term. And we haven't seen, the indie movement is not even old enough yet to see who's going to make it for the long term.
Yeah.
So when the indie movement really, I mean, obviously people have been self-publishing since, print books for a while, but then KDP really took off in sort of 2011 was sort of a tipping point. 2009 in the US, and then sort of 2011, and some places are just discovering it now, right? So we have not even seen a decade go past yet. So
Right.
I don't believe that we can say we have any evidence of people who've managed this for a really long term, which is why I love to listen and learn from people who have been in publishing for 30, 40 years, and they have seen all these changes, and all of them have said that they've crashed and burned several times and then come back because they love this as a job. So all of that to say, if you're at 5 to 6 books and you're overwhelmed, you have to decide what you want, okay? Because if it's, I want to make 6 figures, well, then you have some choices around, right, I'm going to write tons and tons of books and, hone my marketing, or I'm going to have other streams of income, like I've said, around affiliate income or courses, or you stay in your day job and you write as a side gig or a side hustle, and you're happy with the extra money that you're making. Let's say you can make an extra $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
For many people, you can't live on that, but wouldn't it be nice to have that as extra? I mean, that will pay for some holidays, kids, whatever, graduation, college,
You're thinking so practical. I was thinking that'll pay for a trip to Disney World.
yeah, or whatever you want to spend it on. But what I think, there's a huge difference between the author who wants an extra 10 grand a year to the author who wants to make 6 figures from book sales. You have to behave quite differently. And I think the problem with the busy stage of anything is that you haven't stopped. So what I would say is, you need right now stop doing. And in fact, during the pandemic, it's a really good time, and I've been thinking about my next decade. What do I want for my next decade? Because I'm making good money. It's not about the money now, it's about what else do I want. So that's what we all have to decide. So if you're in that busy stage, you need to stop and go, right, why? So, for example, I really believe social media has become quite different to what it was originally. And so now you have to be really careful how you spend your time on social media. I think a lot of it can be completely pointless because of organic reach just disappearing. So if you have to pay to play, where are you going to pay to play? And then you decide, okay, well, I'm going to pay for Amazon ads or BookBub ads. I'm not going to pay to boost this pointless Facebook thing that doesn't sell any books.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So, and then a bigger question a bigger question around what you're writing. So many writers just write whatever they feel like writing without thinking about, where does this fit? And what kind of income can this make? So that doesn't matter if you've got other income, but if you want to make more money with your books, you actually do have to think, who's going to buy this and what's the business model for my books? So I would say that person that you're thinking about just has to take a step back and look at, what do I want to design for the next step? What can I cut out? What do I stop? Yeah, what do I stop doing, and what should I do more of in order to achieve that goal? And I actually think that same behavior, that's exactly what I'm doing now at a decade in with 30 plus books, is what do I want for my next decade? So I've started another podcast, Books and Travel, because I don't know if the Creative Pen podcast will last another decade in the incarnation that it is.
Yeah.
Like you, I mean, the 500th episode is approaching, and at 400 I said I'd go to 500. So the question now is, what's the next step for that? What's the next step for my fiction? So I want to encourage people to just take a step back and really think about, what do you want and what do you need to do to achieve that?
That's brilliant. Now, so I'm looking at all of your gorgeous new covers, well, maybe not so new anymore, but the newer versions of the covers behind you, all framed and beautiful. And I'm thinking, do you think that I hate to call it old advice, but the advice of the past decade to try to stick to one genre or something that in general would be the same group of readers is still applicable, going forward now? You were talking a little bit about some people just like to write whatever, not thinking it through like a business plan. How many products do I have for each of these customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that advice absolutely still stands. It just depends on your personality and what you're going to do for the long term. Again, I mean, in nonfiction, I've been very good at this. I have written books for authors, and the reason I did is that I just started writing to share what I was doing, and because I was early, I turned into someone who was ahead of a lot of other people, but that's just because I was in it early. But now I continue to write books. If you look at my books under Joanna Penn, the covers all look the same. They're very branded, and they are aimed at an audience. And I also have the podcast for an audience. I have a YouTube channel for the audience. I have social media for a specific audience of independent authors, or people who want to be independent authors. So that is very clear. My fiction, on the other hand, is still difficult in that I have 10 action adventure thrillers, I have 3 crime thrillers, I have almost 3 dark fantasy books in a series, and then I have a number of standalones that are ranging from horror to fantasy to YA, so, and I have written all over the place, which is why I'm coming up with this moment of, how do I want to shape my fiction going forwards? Because I'll tell you, it's so hard to market. And as I said, I have a sort of themes and a way of writing, a voice that goes through all my books. But readers of action adventure thriller don't necessarily want to read my dark fantasy Map Walker series. In fact, someone even left a review, like a 2-star review, saying, "I love Joanna's arcane books. I wish she would write those and not these."
Oh no.
And I'm like,
Ow.
okay, yeah, ow. But the thing is, so when I said to my husband, I think that's actually a 5-star review for the other books. It's just a shame she's put that on here. But the thing is, I am doing this for the long term, and I didn't want to get bored. So the more famous writers I will point at, so Jack Reacher, Lee Child's Jack Reacher, I've heard Lee speak on this, and he came out of screenwriting, came out of TV, and he said this is what he aimed to write, a bestseller. He did, and then he said, this is what the audience wants, that's all I'm going to write. He has written one nonfiction, but it fits in. It's called The Hero. But then Val McDermid. Do you know Val McDermid?
I know the name. I don't think I've read them.
Okay. Well, basically, I heard her ask him a question at a online conference that I was listening to. And she asked him this, don't you ever get bored with writing the same thing? Because Val is an incredible writer, and she writes lots of different things. And he basically said to her, Val, you are a great writer, in terms of you, it was almost, I can't remember his exact words, but his was almost, you're following your creative muse, I'm following the market. And my market wants Jack Reacher books, so that's what I'm giving them. Yeah. And it was really interesting, because I feel like perhaps we all do have to consider what the reader wants, or the books will not get bought. But we also have to think about, what does the muse want? But what I'm feeling now is, so I've written 17, 18 fiction books, novels, novellas, plus some short stories. And I feel like, well, maybe now in my next decade, I can afford to be more market focused, because I've written so much that's of my muse. I'm going to write what I find interesting, but maybe I could start considering the marketing when I'm writing. Whereas what normally happens is I just sit down and start writing something, and then at the end I'm like, Oh, okay, that's what it is.
That's awesome.
But what I would say is, I've had someone comment, I've been talking about this recently, and someone said, oh, why would you become something you're not? And I'm like, that's not it at all. The fact is, we reinvent ourselves all the time. And I want to be a better writer in not just in my craft, but also my marketing and my book packaging and my targeting and my storytelling. And you understand screenwriting and the way these blockbuster movies are made. They don't just sit down and do something and then throw it at the wall and see what happens. They craft a package before they sit down to do the work on that stuff. So I think but people listening, again, I think what I'm talking about is probably somewhere you go after you've written some of the things that are on your heart, because otherwise you feel like people are like, oh, but you're doing it just for the money. It's like, well, no, but I am interested in that, and I have written a lot of books of my heart.
And the thing is that when was the last time someone told a bank teller or an IT consultant, but you're just doing it for the money?
No, I really was just doing it for the money back then. But no,
but I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. So why is it a bad thing when it just annoys me? That's
I would never just do it for the money. So I'm not for example, I'm not saying it's bad to be a ghostwriter, but I'm not a ghostwriter, and I feel like ghostwriters, that is their job, and their name is not even on it. Now, I have my name on my books and I write books that I care about, but equally I need to be able to package those more effectively. So, but again, this is a decision that you have to make at different levels of your career, as we're talking about. What about you? Where are you on that level?
Yeah, I think that when I write something that is not exactly what my readers thought they were going to get, then I definitely hear from them a lot more. So that's something. There's a positive in there somewhere. But definitely reading the reviews, even the 1 stars, I'm like, okay, so what you're saying is, if only I had written this. And I thought, well, I'll just write a different series that has that. So because of some reviews I got on a chick lit, which I call it semi-sweet. Do you have semi-sweet chocolate in the UK? I've never seen it outside the US.
No, because our chocolate's quite different to the US. We actually have quite decent chocolate. Whereas you guys just don't have decent chocolate unless it's in an artisan shop.
Yeah, I think I might have to agree with you there. But it's on the darker end. It's probably more like 55% cocoa kind of thing. Anyway, so I have been in my mind, not really in my marketing, because I figure it's not going to make any sense outside the US, calling my chick lit books semi-sweet. The women, the people use words that I use that I think are not that bad. On the other hand, I decided to make the podcast G, so I can't even tell you the words that I don't think are that bad. There's kissing and necking and lovely things that weren't sex, but boy, that really irritated some readers. They're like, they do too much and they say too much.
I think, that's really interesting, and I've had. I don't use any swear words in my books, but I happily burn a nun alive on the High Line in New York. Or,
I think I read that one.
Yeah, that's One Day in New York. Or sort of sacrifice a child on some altar, and people don't complain about that. But but what we're talking about here is really interesting because, and you're exactly right. In romance, like sweet romance, as you say, there might be the one kiss might be the whole highlight, and then they get married. But if you deliver that in erotica, that book is not going to sell. So this is really good. It's about understanding expectation of genre. And I think, so for example, my Map of Shadows and my Matt Walker books, I have written aspects of supernatural, but I didn't write magic until now. And then people are like, what? Why is there magic? Like, this is magic. That's not what I expect from your books. And so the reader expectation from our brand doesn't match their expectation. So even though these books are clearly fantasy and they've got different covers and all of this, and they're in fantasy genre category, it's still so these are really interesting questions. And you asked at the beginning about mistakes, but I'm still learning too. And I feel like we all have to investigate the way this works. And sure, if you get a publishing deal, if I had pitched those books and got a publishing deal for fantasy, maybe the publisher would have said, we need to put these under a different name. But I already maintain 2 names, and I do not want to do another name. I mean, I've done another name with my mum for Sweet Romance, Penny Appleton, but it's not an active brand as such. So it's very hard to maintain multiple brands. So I think we have to strike a balance between writing what we love and writing what interests us, and also figuring out where to pitch it and how to find our readers for that. But I also have confidence that over the long term, if you just keep putting yourself out there, people will find things. And I mean, I'm getting some of the best reviews I've ever got out of my Matt Walker series.
Nice.
But I'm never going to write epic fantasy. I'm never going to be a full-time fantasy writer. So you've got to figure it out for yourself. Like, what do you love? What do people buy? And that's also part of the fun. Like, we wouldn't be doing this if it was just repetition.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about what you said about Lee and Val. I'm sure that, first of all, that wasn't Lee's first rodeo. So maybe he wrote a lot of stuff that was totally from the muse when he was in his screenwriting career. I don't know. But maybe he's perfectly happy to just think of new ways to write Jack Reacher versus...
he is, I don't think he did. He was in TV. So that was the first book he wrote, was a Jack Reacher, but he designed it to be a bestseller.
Yeah.
But as he was in his 40s.
Yeah. I meant that he had been doing writing already.
Yeah, as a screenwriter. But I think as a screenwriter, you don't write the muse. As a screenwriter and with a job in TV, you write what, and he was doing cliffhangers and, with the ad breaks and stuff. So he knew his craft for sure. But it's interesting because now he's just handed over Jack Reacher to his brother. So he's obviously, he's done with Reacher. He always said he would write 21 books and then he would move on. But he's laughing away in his penthouse overlooking the park in New York.
That's right. One of the things that you've said a couple of times about constantly learning. So I don't know Val, but in my mind, I'm thinking, if you were the kind of person who was always looking for ways to become a better writer, to have this book be better than the next, then I think that just by virtue of being really good, you're going to have a lot more reader crossover than if you write just good books, or heaven forbid, don't write mediocre books.
Well, I think the definition of good is in the eye of the reader. What is a good fantasy book is not a good necessarily a good horror, or what is a good sweet romance is not good erotica. So I don't like terms that imply good in terms of that way. But as you say, improving our craft and telling a better story is what we want to do. So for example, I know that setting is one of my strong points and it's based on traveling a lot, but I also know that dialogue is not, I'm not as strong at dialogue as I would like to be. And so learning more about screenwriting, for example, is really good for dialogue because that's what you write most of the time. So I'm trying to get better at dialogue, whilst so you don't just rest on what you're always trying to improve, and just picking something per book. Or like one of my books for Desecration, for example, I really wanted to evoke a particular emotion. So the focus of that book was a particular emotion, and I think I did okay. Nice. But so I think picking each of those things is a good way forward.
Yeah. And then for nonfiction writers, again, just wondering, when, I don't know how much you talk to nonfiction writers, but again, you have found your niche that, your readers, you have a pretty good idea of what they want. And when you're not sure, you survey them, because I know I've been in some of your surveys, which is a great way, I think, for building the book that people actually want to buy. Do you think that aside from the person who's writing 1 or 2 books to supplement the career that they already have and are happy with, do you have any advice for nonfiction writers when it comes to going off on various subjects, or, choosing the topic and thinking about how difficult or easy the marketing might be?
Well, I think with nonfiction, in general, you're going to be most successful if you already have an audience in some way. So, that's why many bloggers, podcasters, speakers have books. It's because they already have an audience and they want to sell them something. So and then potentially if you're, say, an academic and you specialize in a topic, that's why a lot of people go into academic publishing. With the self-help niche, you have to think about which subcategory you're going to be in. But I think that you have to, again, take a step back and figure out what you want to do with that book. So most people who write nonfiction are going to make money in other ways. That might be, again, speaking, teaching, coaching, consulting, services. Like quite a few book cover designers now have written books on book cover design because it attracts people into their business,
Right.
because they're like, people see it and they go, well, I think I should do it myself. And then they read the book and they go, oh, I'm just going to hire someone. Oh, how about this person? So I think a lot of people do write nonfiction to bring people into the other forms of income of the business. And certainly that is effective. So having an ecosystem is really good. That's what I have for the Creative Pen. It is an ecosystem. Of course, you can write the book of your heart for nonfiction, but I think if you write that and you publish it without thinking about all the other things, because nonfiction writers don't tend to be as prolific in the niche as fiction authors, because there's only one, you can only write one book on, I don't know, how to grow organic tomatoes. And then the next book might be how to grow organic, courgettes or something. But, a lot of people don't write that many nonfiction books. They might pick a topic and come up with something, but they generally will have an ecosystem around the book.
Yeah. Good point. Okay. I know that we're going to have to wrap up soon, but one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to say it again, you have many, many times strongly encouraged people to take the assets that they already have and ask themselves, what else can I do with this? There's a whole lot of things like creating different versions of your book that aren't actually going to cost you any money and can end up making you some money. Do you want to just give us a brief the Joanna Penn version of
what you mean, different formats?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, so I think many people, if you're self-publishing, they just think, oh, just do an ebook. But of course, you can do paperback, print on demand. You can do hardback, print on demand now with Ingram Spark. I do large print, also audiobook. You can narrate your own or work with a narrator. Then, of course, you can multiply that by the number of platforms. So with ebooks now, it's not just Amazon. With audiobooks, it's not just Amazon. You can publish on many different sites, including at the moment, I think with lockdown is really interesting because library apps are becoming, there's a lot of borrows in library apps, and you can be in library apps for your ebooks and your audiobooks very easily. So then you're thinking about countries. So you multiply that by all the countries you can be in. And I think I've sold now in 144 or something countries through the various platforms. And you can only do that if you publish wide, so not exclusive on Amazon. But then I'd also say to people, if you want to be exclusive on Amazon for your ebook, you can still be wide with your print books, your audiobooks. So what I think is, don't consider it as one book, consider it as, one product that you can turn into all these other products and other streams of income. So, but I think because we can, say I'm holding this book, I've written a book, people just tend to stop there, whereas there's lots and lots of other opportunities. So yeah, just think much bigger.
I love it. And this is why I will tell my listeners one more time. You've heard me say it before, but now we're going to say it right in front of Joanna. Excellent podcast, excellent website. You will learn so much, including, Joanna, you are a big lover of all things in the future. One of my favorite just bits out of an episode was when you and I can't think of who were talking about the licensing rights. If somebody goes up on one of these space shuttles that are now going to be open for tourism, what are the rights to the music and the ebooks and the whatever entertainment is up there? And do they really have the right to read your book unless they bought that right from you?
Yeah, with some off-world rights.
That's right.
Yeah. Which basically publishers will take everything, but usually, as you say, it's a publishing contract is world English. So the question is, what is off world rights? And so yeah, there's so many things happening. I mean, the reason J.K. Rowling, in inverted commas, self-published the Harry Potter ebooks is because she never signed her ebook rights away, because she published well before digital rights, and then she said, no, I think I'll do that myself, and started her Pottermore company. So this is the thing, there's so much opportunity for writers. It really is the best time to be a writer.
Oh, I love it. Now, people are going to be wondering, if they don't know of you already, where can they find you and your books and all the things that you do?
Yes, so as podcast listeners, come on over to The Creative Penn podcast on all the usual apps, and thecreativepenn.com, pen with a double N, for my free blueprint and lots of free resources, and any questions at The Creative Penn on Twitter.
Awesome. Joanna, you have made me such a happy person. My 200th episode, and I have Joanna Penn. Oh.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Kitty, and see you in a couple of hundred.